So that means now I have the chance to present her as she is stepping up a life, and not only in our imagination. What is interesting for our debate and our context is that she is not only related to the legal field, but also a professional architect. So she understands what she's talking about from the point of view, not only of the technical side, but also from the constructivist side. She's an historian of architecture or whatever. That means you're endowed or at least burdened with all the methodological questions that are in historiography to be solved in a way. And your background is our studies in Strasbourg and in Venice. And you must also know that she holds a doctorate degree in architecture from the École Nationale Supérieure d'Architecture, Paris-Malaquais, Université Paris-Est. You have taught at several architectural schools, Paris-Belleville, Paris-Malaquais, Marseille, Lumini, and others. Moreover, you worked as a translator of architectural theoretical works. I think it's this one, for example, I'm well prepared, as you see. And most recently, you had a postdoctoral residency at the Laboratoire d'études de l'architecture potentielle at the Université de Montréal. So, what is not in your official CV, and I'm not talking about everything, of course, but what I know also that you are implied in debates in France now about architecture and the logic of the architecture of courtrooms and courthouses. That is a larger commission. You certainly will tell us about this. And for the presentation of today, you have chosen the topic contemporary courthouses, architectural images, and spatial representations of justice. So feel very, very welcomed, and calm down if you say it is too much. We give you still 5 minutes. I can imagine the horror to be in a train and to see there are people sitting. But we had a nice conversation. Don't be scared and go ahead.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
And thank you very much also for being here, and it's a real pleasure to be in such a place where we can talk, we can meet you, we can have space and time to we can write. So I apologize speaking such poor English, and I will try to compensate for it by using a lot of illustration for my talk, hoping that the image will speak for themselves. You can look at this as if it was a movie, an experimental movie. But even if I spoke perfect English, I would have used a lot of pictures, for two reasons. The first reason is that we are going to speak about architectural representation of justice, how justice can be represented today by architecture. That is, what architects have been designing and building in order to answer the judiciary and politicians' demand over the past 20 years for a new monumentality. The second reason is that architecture today is more and more a fact of image, powerful image in the context of globalization and high media exposure of architecture as a worldwide level. I will first talk about what has happened in France, not because I'm French, but because France stands a paradigmatic case at the European and American level. It is in France that the first courthouse model has been theorized before and during the French Revolution, and then replicated across the country through the 19th century. Now, it is also in France that the first break with that model took place in the 90s, 20 years ago, with important consequences on the following big competition in France and elsewhere in Europe. After a short historical background, I will explore Richard Rogers' Courthouse in Bordeaux as an architectural revolution. Then consequences of Bordeaux's brick in new courthouse architecture. What that brick has been on both practical and symbolic plans, that is, in terms of architectural composition and in terms of symbolic representation of justice. Then I will see the consequences, the consequences of that brick, as I said, and then in conclusion is a new paradigm in courthouse architecture is emerging today. So, short, we began more, less short historical background. At the beginning, there were no constructions. A simple branch belt was settled in a particular place, outdoors, away from the town of the village, around a tree, a stone, in a high point, that is in the sacred site. While the tree or the stone refers to the magical, the symbolic universe of the primitive religiosity, the legal piece relayed inside the fence as a special order in which all violence was repressed, since all actions, all words, and all kinds of behavior were subjected to control by the authorities. Then, justice became itinerant, especially the royal and seigneurial justice. It went from castle to palace, where a lit de justice, a bed of justice, was laid for the time of the trial. The first specific judicial buildings appeared in the late Middle Age, on one hand parliaments and other royal supreme courts, on the other hand the small auditoire as a civic place located in the main center of the town or the village. Parliaments and courts were magnificent, both inside and outside the building, but they didn't follow any unified pattern of composition that characterized the building. The auditoire soon became stereotyped, but without having a particular shape. It looked like a big house and consisted in two levels with two different functions. On the first floor, a room is practically accommodated and decorated for the trial proceeding, while the ground floor is occupied by a few jail cells and some commercial space. It was only on the 20th century that the 19th century, that the courthouse became type, using architectural vocabulary and characterization easily recognizable in the urban space. It was first theorized as the Temple of Justice, through yearly contests organized by the French Academy of Art after the French Revolution. It was then replicated all over the country during the 19th century in a self-conscious, systematic, and long-term way, so that it became a model which still inhabits our collective imagination. This is the logo of the Department of Justice in 1992. This is a neoclassical way of composing and representing the public function of the building, as it doesn't work only for justice, but for all the most relevant public buildings of the new states. At the same time, we found everywhere in Europe temples with columns on the front name, with the same device of a main stern colonnade applied to the main facade. The temples paint, townhouse, temples of culture, museum, temples of origin, cathedrals, and temples of business, stock exchange. And they replicate each other. Pierre-Louis Baltard's courthouse in Lyon, designed in 1835 and completed in 1847, is copied directly from Carl Friedrich Schinkel's Altes Museum built in Berlin in 1830. But these buildings are no longer classical. They are neoclassical. That means that they still use a classical vocabulary, but in a modern sense. Art in the classical age was entirely based on the mimesis. That is, on the imitation of a higher and external authority, nature, the human being. All the arts are following this principle: dance, music, architecture, or poetry. The architects of the Renaissance rediscovered in the architecture of ancient Greece a whole set of rules of proportions and relationships between parts and the whole in the human body. They reviewed them in architectural compositions in order to unify the architectural space to make it harmonious and comprehensive. This is the age of enlightenment, the age of reason. The Gaelic mind looks at the world and transforms it. In the 19th century, this conception of art was put in crisis. On one hand, the Romantic artists proclaimed that creation has no rule to follow. On the other hand, political and economical transformations of society call for public buildings and public works more useful and less ornamental. Louis-Nicolas Durand, who taught architecture at the École Polytechnique from 1796 to 1834, explained that the architectural composition has to be as simple, regular, and symmetrical as possible, because practicability and saving money are the main principles of architecture, especially for functional building designed for the public administration. In other words, the simpler the shapes, the less expensive will be the building. The École Polytechnique still exists today, has been created in Paris in 1719 to train the engineers and architects of the state. The teaching of Durand, who wrote several treatises and teaching books, had a great influence throughout the 19th century. The classical vocabulary is normalized, especially the architectural orders, and deprived of their relationships with nature and human beings. Students learn to reproduce projects and draw with graph paper, and to follow a procedure, a marche à suivre, for composing any project. In France, but also in other European countries, this point of view lasted until the 70s, the 1970s, also because there were very little new judicial constructions. And those rare new courthouses were designed by the officials architect of the state. Then, after May 78, some experiences of cities of justice were gained, but they can be seen as a digression in courthouse architectural history. They tried to open the judicial building toward the city and toward society, and to express how justice is a complex matter with many facets. I have no space here to talk about and explore that short experimental time of alternative ways of expressing justice. I will just show you some pictures which are, I think, sufficiently explicit. The demand of monumentality soon came back in the 90s in an emphatic way in the context of the big action plan of the French Department of Justice, a 10-year program providing for the constructions of 20 new courthouses, including 10 major operations. This is what we will now review, always from the perspective of the representation of justice. The French Revolution in courthouses architecture is not a fact of a French architect. It has been done by an English architect, Sir Richard Rogers, the famous representative of the high technology tendency, who won the first courthouse competition of that big plan of the French Department of Justice, the new Bordeaux courthouse in 1992. What Rogers did and what he said. First, what he did. He did 3 iconoclastic operations. First, include all judicial services, offices in a bar with a recurrent surface, but without specific assignment. It makes the traditionally opaque facade of the institution totally transparent with a huge glass facade on the backside. Third, individualize the courtrooms and give extraordinary shape to each of them, highly visible from the outside through the transparency of the glass box. The courtrooms are indeed 7 identical objects as high as the whole building, simply placed next to each other along the side of the pattern, directly laid on concrete cripples. Those 3 operations can be summarized in just one. Extract the more significant element from the functional program and set them at the urban scale on the backdrop of all the rest of the program entirely trivialized. The lateral facade of the building offers a cross-section of this process. And what Richard Rogers said. He said that offices are very simple, on a flexible type, explained me the assistant of Rogers in Paris. We did not specify where everybody is. If we are specific, we risk to fall in details. In that way, everyone can imagine that it will be there or there. Anyway, the whole organization will be changed in a few years. A rigid building would risk becoming useless. We build a lot. With experience, we know that every time they do something rigid, we fix. On the other hand, we thought that the courtrooms were really theaters. They have a very codified fighting history. There one can imagine fixed forms. It is an argument to have a very symbolic shape. Then, in the presentation booklet of the competition, we can read. The 7 courtrooms are arranged in a row similar to 7 individual buildings set in a large hall, clearly visible through the large glazed facade. And Roger said also that the office space forms a rectangular block just behind the courtrooms. The particular expression of the courtrooms and the administrative positions, the post-administrative, is an important element of the concept. The office's accommodation, the logement au bureau, is therefore a recognizable element visible from the outside and the salle des papers. Our design aims to make more legible the judicial system proceedings and avoids the feeling that everything takes place down the hall in a confined place. So we have, on one hand, extraordinary courtrooms with an interior very particular and very beautiful light. And on the other side, we have a simple offices block with half of the offices on that side. We have no lights, instead of how Rogers explained also for the competition. All that part of the building, especially that ones, have absolutely no natural lights, and they have to use electrical light all the day. And these two parts of the building are divided by a fault between the salle des pas perdus on the right and the office building on the left. So this is a picture you saw in all architectural magazines. Richard Rogers also put it on his website. But this building doesn't work because this is a program. And a judicial program is really very complex, especially as regards relationships between jurisdictions and services, connection between the different space and area, and the flow and accessibility management, insofar as all kinds of people, mostly vulnerable people or people in need, are coming to the courthouse. Furthermore, this is another, programs are full of that type of diagram. And furthermore, the offices account for more than 50% for the floor space, which is a considerable increase compared to the 19th century court building, while courtroom represent at the most 10 or 15% of floor space. That means that Richard Rogers' courtroom in Bordeaux is not working at all, while the program seemed to have been made for Christian Porzenpark project, of course, who was another architect involved in that competition. Of course, it's less exciting. If you remember last I remember last summer I was in Bordeaux, in a bus towards the station, and two young English or American tourists were sitting in front of me. When the bus passed in front of the courthouse by the little street which goes along the side facade, at that time one girl said to the other, "Look at this," and the other one responded, "Oh, it's funny." I'm not sure that courtrooms have to be funny. So, consequences of Bordeaux bricks in new courthouse architecture. I will look at the Jeanne Nouvelle courthouse in Nantes, Richard Rogers courthouse in Antwerp, and Tom Means courthouse in Eugene, in Oregon, USA. Whereafter, what the French happened? The competition of Bordeaux was absolutely the first one of all the program of the ministry. First of all, they have never more invited foreign architects on a courthouse contest. Then they have put everything back in the box. But like Pandora's box, they failed to close it. All contributions of Rogers' device remained. The transparency of the public hall, the opacity of the courtroom, now in any case treated as objects, stayed into this transparent space. The spatial separation between the public and private sectors, and the maximum flexibility of workplace with unmarked and normalized offices. So, Nouvelle takes Rogers' device and turns it in an horizontal sense. This is the first draw of Nouvelle. His assistant said me that he came with that draw, he put it on the table and just said, do that. So we have the basement, the technical basement, courtrooms as boxes, and the workspace as a roof that became more and more large. First, this is the section of the building as it was built. Then he reintegrates the salle de papier. He asked his assistant to look at the most recently winner projects to understand how big the salle de papier could be in order to have a bigger one as possible. And he had a salle de papier of 2,000 meters square. Then he makes all offices. Then he make all offices became invisible altogether in just one huge plan, being the roof of the building as a big ledge. When Rogers wanted to show offices, Nouvelle made them invisible. And it also, this is a plan, the roof plan of all offices with courts, we call cour anglaise, English courts, which are large, 5 meters. This is the public hall and the boxes of the courthouses, which are 3 boxes perfectly regularly and symmetrical put on, and this is inside of a courthouse, or of a courtroom. Then he did perfectly and regular and symmetrical plans, and he also drew it on millimetrical paper, draft paper, like even if now it's all made with a computer, like Durance told his students to do. And of course, and this is axonometry, which shows how regular is all plan. And in both sides of the first perspective of the building we saw, he put that, he makes copies of the dictionary of character, equity, justice, juste et justesse. On the next competition, the competition of Milan courthouses, 3 similar images appears. That never happens before. It's very unusual to have such similarity in contemporary competition. Either new typology appearing. The winner design have no architectural taste, as Françoise Jourda, the architect, explained to me, but it works. For competition, she just put all elements in of the functional program. She just put them in place, and then if she wins, she developed their materiality, their potentiality. It's like cooking, she explained. Here, the materiality of the courtrooms. This is the growth of the competition, and this is the building as it is now. So between that and that, she completely reviewed all the materiality of courtrooms and grouped them in 2 big blocks. While the transparency of all the blocks remains with different levels of transparency, and after that, a reinterpretation of the traditional portique in the front. This is the floor I'm on right floor of the offices, which are of course in top respect to the basement with courtrooms, and you look how different is the architectural treatment. Then the box explodes, and both functional parts of the courthouse became two separate entities. First in Grenoble, in a very difficult site, a sharp triangle with the main entrance in the acute angle. On left hand, a high-story office building. On right hand, the block including 13 courtrooms on 2 floors. The salle des pas perdus became a kind of technical gallery in between the two functional parts of the building. Of course, we see again in the architectural speech the dialectical distribution from transparency to opacity, transparency being the materiality of opacity being the materiality of courtroom block, while transparency is now represented by the glass curtain wall of the office building. At last, in Avignon, in a quite normal site, in front of the whole city walls, the winning project of Adrien Feinsilber, the designer of La Géode in the Parc de la Villette in Paris, act a complete spatial separation between both public and private parts of the building. In the presentation text of the project, the architect explained that you want to create one more monument in the city, which is added to those already existing as a piece of the historic town who goes beyond the other side of the wall. Here is the Palais des Papes. We can see from the top of the offices of the president. Another competitor who did a fully integrated courthouse with high functionality performance and a beautiful design was Disparate. He told me that while he was presenting his project to the jury, a member of the jury suddenly asked him, "Well, but how the person who go past this building will understand that it is a courthouse, the courthouse?" He concluded that judicial wanted something allegorical. Then I will show you, I have no notes, so I will improvise, what Roger's the consequences. So it's the chapter of the consequences of Richard Roger's work in Bordeaux. During that time, Richard Rogers was going off with his concept of a cover highly expressive for the courtrooms. And he won unfair courthouse competitions, which is a very big courthouse with 33 courtrooms, so 5 more big than the one of Nantes, for example. And he will developing his concept in a very, very highly expressive way. So now the courtrooms are all in the top of the building, and they create a sort of signal at the scale of the city. And all offices are put on 3 layers in big, like you see first in sort of fingers coming from the center. So courtrooms are very world space of architectural space, and the salle des pas perdus is with the expression high-tech, especially from Mauritius. The next one, I will see the one of Tom Main, which is an architect from the group called Courthouses, and these are his first examples of what he built in the postmodern age, and then the two far he win in Paris, and which is now might be completed in 2017. So, Tom Main in USA. In USA, there are no competitions. The presidents of the courts are named for all their life, and the Department of Justice choose an architect and say that this will be this architect will build the building. And when the president of that court saw Tom Main, it was very worried. And Tom Main said, well, come with me and we have a trip in Europe. And I will show you what is my idea. So well, they went in Europe, they went in France, and they went to see la Fondation Cartier de Jean Nouvel in Paris, la chapelle de Longchamp de Le Corbusier, and the courthouse of Bordeaux, who was just completed. And then this is the president of the courthouse, which is in the center of the city, which is a very regular urban plan. And Tom Main did that building, which is completely expressive. So this is interior and some views, and he designed courtrooms really as if they were theaters, and they are all on the ground floor, and inside all the part of the offices of the working space is completely flexible, even if all the architecture is moving. And so after that, I would like, for conclusion, to say that we saw how in the historical time judicial architecture has been more and more codified and then normalized. In the 19th century, as sorry, so I drink some water. So we have seen how in the historical time, judicial architecture has been more and more codified and then normalized, especially in the 19th century, as a war architecture in the same time. And in the same time, law has also changed. Now, in our time, it seems that architecture moved towards more fantasy, emotional expression, freedom of any rules, that is, to liberate itself from normally of modern movement. This new tendency called hypermodern movement is acting in the whole world, with huge effects in public architecture that is also in courthouse architecture. But in that, very spectacular images in space can be fully expressed in museums, in stadium, concert hall, or train station. In the case of the courthouse, it is applied on only one part of the building, in the public part. It is because people are working on it, on that private house. On the backstage of an entirely trivialized and nominal space, a workspace, courthouses are treated as theaters, where maybe individual human destiny, madness or deprivation, are formed wide under the light of power. Is this dialectical opposition between public and private domain is also an image, an expression of what have been called yet in 1968 the Society of Entertainment, la Société du Spectacle, by Bels. Now that our private society behaviors are more and more controlled and thus trivialized, the public space becomes all a stage for individual representation. Last but not least, laws are systems. I say laws because there are different laws. The China's law is not the Roman or German law, which is also different from the municipal law or the common law. There are not only different rules, there are almost different families, spirits. They have their own vocabulary, their own concepts. Maybe it is this fundamental difference that has created the explosion of Bordeaux's courthouse. It seems like a deflagration in the architectural meeting of common law and Roman law, maybe. Because law is not only a collection of law, law is an architecture.